Well, Mr. President, thank you very, very much. And let me just add my own sincere and warm welcome to all of you today. This is the last day of the summit. We've had a multiplicity of events, meetings, conversations, but I think this is the first time everyone is actually around the same table. And I got to say, looking at this, if a photograph is worth 1,000 words, well, we've got probably 10,000 words here. It's a very powerful photograph to see. Um, to start things off, we very much welcome getting the African perspective, starting with the president of Senegal, the chairperson of the African Union, President Macky Sall. Monsieur le Président, micro est à vous.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Secrétaire d'État, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. President Joseph Biden, Mr. Secretary of State, dear hostess, dear colleagues, heads of state, ladies and gentlemen, ministers. On behalf of Africa, I would like to thank President Biden for his warm welcome. I would like to thank your wife, Jill Biden, for the delicious dinner we had at the White House yesterday and the wonderful music that came along with that dinner. Thank you for your hospitality. I would like to commend the excellent organization of our summit. We appreciate your attachment to the African and American partnership and the considerable time and effort that your administration has committed to organizing this summit. And it's in this spirit that we have come to revitalize our common agenda with you. Certainly, times are uncertain and troubled. The challenges are more numerous and complex, but it's in hard times that friendship finds its greatest test of greatness, trust, and mutual respect. In this time of profound transition, working together, this requires another way of thinking of the world. By working as conscious partners in a world of unequal development in respect of common values and their differences. On this basis, Mr. President, Africa, through my voice, wishes to share with you 6 priorities and a message for our summit. The first priority: peace, security, and the fight against terrorism in Africa. We wish for the fight against terrorism to be a part, an integral part of the world struggle against this blight, to contribute to international security and peace. Mr. President, we expect a strong commitment on this vital priority and support from the United States so that the UN Security Council places the fight against terrorism in Africa in the framework of the collective security mechanism that is in the UN Charter. Second priority. Before speaking about the second priority, on behalf of all the colleagues, I would like to commend President Biden on the intention to place Africa as a permanent representation in the G20. We need to applaud that initiative for our participation in the G20 as a permanent member, and also integrating the continent as a permanent member at the Security Council. The second priority, Mr. President, before the triple impact of climate change, a health crisis, and a major war, Africa presents its advocacy for partial allotment of special drawing rights. And you raised a very important aspect, and we hope that the Congress can accompany you in this endeavor and the implementation in the G20 on debt relief after these different shocks throughout the world, including in developed countries. Thousands of people are no longer able to bear the cost of living and fall into extreme poverty. The situation is even more difficult for much more weaker economies such as ours. The massive efforts put forth by developed countries through businesses, we put in place economic and social resilience measures which are limited because the crisis is so serious. This is why we advocate for an action in solidarity that is international to reinforce resilience and economic revitalization. I have to say that the current crisis weakens democracy on the continent. Indeed, without some betterment that is economic, democracy will always remain fragile and vulnerable with the risk of instability, which we've already witnessed in several countries. The third priority, Africa wishes a more sustained commitment on investment in development infrastructures, roads, railroads, electric plants, digital infrastructure. Yesterday, we saw and we listened with great interest during the business forum your statement that Africa is the last great worksite of the world with projects to develop infrastructures in Africa. Some have begun, and others are to be begun. These are opportunities for investment for shared prosperity.
Pour l'Afrique, nous appelons à la mobilisation diligente des ressources annoncées par le G7.
We ask for the mobilization of sources launched by the G7 for the world infrastructure and for investment to support the implementation of infrastructure in Africa. Obviously, it's not about just about mobilizing the public sector, although it does need to be involved, but funds need to be invested in Africa to invest and to obtain private investments. The priority, Mr. President, is that Africa is subject to the pollution, the plight of pollution, and we want a solid development in carbon, which is resilient to the climate change. I remind you that according to the estimates made by GIEC, Africa needs $86 million per year by 2030 to fund these needs to adapt. Since financial commitments in order to convene to fund the commitment, Africa's governments will continue to resort to debts to finance their green projects and their mixed energy strategies. But Africa asks for an equitable green transition to satisfy its industrialization needs and at a competitive cost, and to ensure the universal access to electricity in more than 600 million families who still don't have electricity. This is a responsibility that we African leaders could give up on, but we need to use our available resources in the field of energy transition. This fifth priority, Africa would like to work with the United States to win the war against hunger. We salute your country and your support to financing funds in the context of the World Bank for food production. In the media, Africa would like urgent measures to be taken to facilitate the access to the markets of fertilizers. In the long term, we want to work with the United States above all to improve production in Africa, including by making massive investments in the diversification of the chains, value chains and infrastructure. The joint statement on food security, which will be released at the end of the summit, is a good action plan in order to fulfill this goal. With the lessons that we learned from the crises, the time is right to take vigorous action in the field of agriculture and food security. Mr. President, I propose that our summit launch a presidential initiative at your level on agriculture in Africa. Sixth priority, Africa asks for a more inclusive and just world governance by accelerating the reform process of the UN Security Council and to give a seat to the African Union in the UN. And thank you for this. We have gotten the response that we wanted from you. Thank you. And we want the support of the United States, and we thank the United States very warmly for the commitments that they made for Africa's place at the G20. And this will happen at the next G20 summit. So thank you, Mr. President. These are the 6 priorities. As far as our message is concerned, this is a renewed commitment to open for dialogue and partnership, for strong international relations. In this spirit, Africa calls for the lifting of sanctions which continue to affect the Zimbabwean people. Zimbabwe has been sanctioned since Mugabe's time, and I think it's time to lift these sanctions so that the Zimbabwe people can continue to fight efficiently against underdevelopment and poverty. In the name of my colleagues, I must also tell you that we are concerned, Mr. President, by the American bill on economic and trade between your country and foreign powers. This bill, with its sanctions, which targets a whole continent, is the first in international relations. Africa is asking why such a bill exists and why Africa is targeted. And in the spirit of the rules of the World Trade Organization, we ask for this project to be reviewed for the implementation of this would damage the relationships between the US and Africa, and we don't want this to happen. Our hope, and that's why we're here today with you, our hope is to pursue with you our common efforts for the Africa-US partnership and build together this partnership on a more solid and confident nature for progress and shared prosperity for our people.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President.
To the chairperson of the African Union Commission, Chairperson Moussa Faki Mohamed.
Merci, Monsieur le Secrétaire d'État, Excellence.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary of State, Your Excellency, Mr. President. We salute the President of the Senegal, Macky Sall.
And facilities offered for the success of this summit. Notre rencontre d'aujourd'hui.
Our meeting today is historical for many reasons. All the aspirations which were undertaken with the help of the President Macky Sall are part of the Agenda 2063, converge upon our goals, which concern peace, integration, inclusive development, good governance, democracy, and human rights. This was a result of a collective intellectual effort of men and women who in Africa, politicians, university experts, civil service, civil society, and the private sector. The Agenda 2063 is a concentration of both doctrines and programs for Africa for the next 50 years since it was implemented in 2013 to ensure its success in its objective. Africa is counting on its own efforts, on its own genius, and is committed to a solution provided by Africa itself. It counts on the solidarity of its friends and respect and mutual advantageous results. In this perspective of solidarity, we say sincerely to all of our partners that we prefer concrete action rather than intentions of goodwill. We know that seeking practical solutions is agreed upon by our American partner. And this is our wish, and the most ardent wish, is that the partnership with the United States will give us the financial needs that we need in order for it become a real lever for the fulfillment of these goals for the Agenda 2063. It will be this partnership that will be significant for our people. Thank you very much.
I think we will now ask our colleagues from the media leave the room. Thank you very much.